Do you feel the calling to help the world heal in these times of uncertainty from violence and trauma using powerful spiritual tools combined with action? Do you want to shift your personal and our collective destiny lines from war, oppression, and genocide into peace? If so, I warmly welcome you here today. This is Destiny Lines, Sacred Activism for Peacemaking and Ending Violence. My name is Rachel Mann, PhD. I am a sacred activist, social scientist, shamanic healer, and spiritual mentor. Come learn from my stories, experiences, and research, as well as from those of visionary thought leaders who are working on the spiritual frontiers of sacred activism to end violence. I invite you to step up with me into this extremely important work. Find out how it is part of the fulfillment of your unique mission and purpose in life. Let's go. There's no time to lose. Welcome again to my podcast, Destiny Lines. I'm Rachel Mann, PhD. I am so very glad you've joined me today to continue our exploration of how to harness humanity's highest destiny lines to a great peace. And in particular, because today I want to talk about my view that personal and collective healing is central to this work and to sacred activism for peacemaking. So this is not to say that healing is the be-all and end-all or will solve all of our problems, either in our personal lives, in our families, our communities, or on the planet today. There are important areas where work must continue to be done, including systemic, political, socioeconomic, ecological, technological, environmental, and others. Indeed, part of our healing work can also lead us to understand how we will put our sacred activism to work in service. I view life as multidimensional. We live in a world of form and physicality and action, even as we are energetic emanations of soul and spirit. So, inasmuch as we each consist of body, mind, emotions, soul, and spirit, as we seek to catalyze humanity's destiny lines into a better future, our sacred activism for peacemaking must embrace every level. Again, I define sacred activism as bridging our concrete actions in the world with spirituality. In my view, a robust spirituality should give us a cosmological and mystical understanding of the nature of reality and of our unique, authentic reason for being here. It should provide maps or a map about how to navigate life robustly and passionately through its joys and challenges, triumphs and hardships. And ever so importantly, spirituality should provide rich resources for doing our inner work, as well as sacred practices and tools for staying in communion with the spirit within, through, and around all that is, with our innate oneness and our highest self. It should give us meaning, purpose, and hope. Healing is one critical area of inner work. I can say this with confidence based on the 20 years I personally spent healing symptoms of PTSD from growing up with a fascinating and sometimes amazing mother who was also, sadly, very narcissistic, abusive of self and others, and yes, herself very wounded and unhealed. I mean, I would not be here today speaking to you if it had not been for the energy healing tools that I used alongside Jungian psychoanalysis, trauma-informed talk therapy, and psychodrama. And also because of the Native American inspired and infused spiritual path I walk, along with Buddhism. Yep, it took that much to get to the place where I am today, where I can actually honestly say that I no longer am in the grip of the panic attacks, terror, triggers, and life-depleting thinking, actions, and outer events that directly pointed to the traumas of my childhood into my adulthood from my mother. And in truth, it was right at the center of this suffering and its transmutation that I found my mission and purpose as a sacred activist for peacemaking, as a healer, as a spiritual teacher. It has deeply informed my academic teaching and research, and what I thus offer to my students even today in those domains. Now, I also want to be clear that I don't claim here that I'm all fixed, nice, and perfect. I still have challenges and am always working on myself. I make mistakes and still can hurt my loved ones, not intentionally, of course, I hope. I don't think I do, but I consider inner work and the healing spiral important to my integrity to be sitting here and talking with you about healing and how it can help you, but also, frankly, to my sanity. I mean, I wouldn't be as sane as I am, as I feel I am, if it hadn't been for the healing work I did. So, I don't believe healing is an endeavor that seeks perfection. Although, I have to grapple with that perfectionist streak in me that wants, everything in my life to be tidy and taken care of and, to never have any problems or challenges. But ultimately, my own journey has taught me that healing nourishes the seeds of love for oneself in our messy humanity, and it thus leads us and has led me into greater levels of self-acceptance and thus inner peace. Peace has not come by removing challenges in my life. Peace has come by healing those things that are old and that no longer need to have a grip on me, but also by accepting the ways in which maybe sometimes, occasionally, they still do. Healing makes us authentic and noble and enables us to have great love for our beloveds, other human beings, and Mother Earth. It also leads us to the love that then ultimately we want to give back in service. So love is the goal, but not an idealized perfectionistic love, but a messy, always evolving, always learning love. So let me now return to my overarching message about the centrality of healing as one very important spoke on the wheel of sacred activism for peacemaking. And one thing I will say is that if we aren't doing this kind of healing and this inner work, then we are going to usually, sometimes unconsciously, maybe consciously, in a way turn around and perpetuate the wounding, even though we're trying to do good. So I think it's fair to say that all human beings all over the planet that, well, not all, but that, human beings in general all over the planet are the walking wounded to one degree or another. I mean, sometimes we can clearly see and feel it in others, in our family members, friends, coworkers, and even in people who are even of people who are strangers, and of course within ourselves. And, this is a result of the impact of trauma, whether through loss, betrayal, abuse, abandonment, and more. And the impact can be psychological, energetic, and physical. It may lurk in deep and unconscious ways, limiting our view of self and the conditions of our life without our even knowing it. We may not be fully thriving or manifesting our full creative potential. Our relationships may be challenging, or we find we can't find love, or we are chronically afraid of abandonment. There may be challenges with our health beneath which lurk emotional imbalances and stresses. So we may be mired in scarcity in finances and scarcity thinking. We can be caught in negative thinking, fear, anxiety, depression, untransmuted grief. I mean, there are so many ways that old and even new pain can negatively impact us, right? So the effects of unhealed, untransmuted trauma can also be seen on the world stage, where there are wars, genocides, oppression, violence, a lack of equality, respect for human rights and social justice, and so on. I see the shadow of ancient losses and harms repeating transgenerationally, sometimes for hundreds, even thousands of years. When leaders of nations seek to wage war and oppress their own people and others, as Hitler did in Europe and Putin is doing in Ukraine and the Crimea and other places, we see the lurking distortions of trauma in their concept of self and others, paired with the tremendous control they have over natural and artificial resources, money, prisons, weapons, and war. Psychologists and historians have studied the childhoods and histories of both men, as well as other authoritarian dictators, both past and present, and linked their megalomaniacal, empire-making ambitions and their will to have absolute control over others as in part a result of growing up in abusive households and or oppressive societies, and usually the two go hand in hand. Now, poverty itself is a trauma, and as such, families and communities can be caught in its grip one generation after another, due to outside forces coupled with inner dynamics within individuals, within families and communities. So clearly, poverty worldwide is due to systemic imbalances that are perpetuated through institutions and by groups and individuals who have a stake in holding power. The unequal distribution of resources arises out of fear. Fear arises out of the experience of harms. And fear then leads to grasping and greed. So some have much and others have little. I mean, even as I speak of these things, my heart is heavy. But it is a passion of mine to speak openly with heart, with love, about this suffering, about this worldwide suffering, because it is only when we start to talk about it openly, when we start to tell the stories of our own hurts, the stories of history, that we begin to step towards healing. So, I see, and my conviction that healing is so important arises not only out of experiences in my own healing journey, where through the portal of my own physical, emotional pain, I would enter into in energy healing sessions, or when I was sitting on a cushion in meditation and I would come into contact with deeper ancestral wounds and wounds from other lives and so on. So this is not just an academic area of study for me. It is deeply personal. But I've also seen so much of this in my shamanic healing work with clients over 16 years. So let me explain a little bit about what I do so you can understand how I see this. So when we start a session, we sit and talk for a bit about what has been coming up for you. So I'll shift to you here. What is up? What is out of balance and troubling you? And then while you're telling me your story or describing your symptoms, I'm not only listening with my mind attuned, but also with my empathy and ability to feel and read energy. It is then often that I begin to sense deeper influences, causes beyond the presenting inner or outer symptom or story. I begin to sense perhaps a trauma from the past that is remembered by you or somewhat or wholly unconscious. I may hear whisperings as if from ancestors in the room whose suffering is right there, expressed through your challenges, your symptoms. I call this capturing the energy cord or pathway that I will then follow as I undertake the energy healing section of our session. And so at this point, I have you laid down on a table fully clothed, and I start to cleanse and clear the surface imprints in the energy body or light body that are mirroring the psychological, emotional, or outer conditions that you describe. And these can appear as like liquids or smoke or fog or just dense, deep, impacted, like tar-like energies. They manifest in a lot of different ways, and I have many different methods to loosen them up and to open the energy body and to remove them. But fundamentally, that is not going to be enough to effect the deep kind of transformation that you are seeking, that my client and I are seeking. So I then journey to extract the wound, meaning that I journey down into the subconscious, into what I call the deep self. And there I can review, revise, or remove the deep, often unconscious and negative beliefs and soul contracts that have arisen as a result of the wound. And I can actually really, in a sense, remove the actions, the words, the experiences from that harm. So there, as I journey, I see images, I get emotional and sense impressions, I hear sounds and words from a client's personal trauma, perhaps in childhood or more recently. Say, for instance, if somebody was in a bad car accident when they were an adult. But I also often encounter the unhealed traumas of the ancestors, of their ancestors, of your ancestors, of other lives, of groups and communities, as well as of larger, more collective harms and imbalances. I mean, I remember in one energy healing that I had for myself, that I just saw a random battlefield after the battle was over. And I was really being shown a collective experience of the battlefield, not a specific battlefield. And yes, this was a result of something that was going on in my life that then I entered through this portal. And so you can understand that in my healing journey, just from the little snippets I've given you, how my own healing led me, not only helped explain my concern about war from childhood on, but then ultimately manifested in my doing the work I'm doing now. Now, sometimes I even hear the cry of animals, places on the land and of earth itself when I journey into the wound. in a client session. So all of this I literally extract with a Vogel 12-sided quartz cut crystal. So it is no longer sitting within the deep psyche like a never-healed scar around which then begin to grow and form crystallized energies. And this energy within the deep psyche is then what in a way is the attractive force for repeating cycles of similar types of experiences and woundings throughout a lifespan, or within a group, throughout that group's history. This is powerful and transformational work that I will say goes well beyond what talk therapy can provide. Now, for the purposes of my theme today, how central healing is to creating an enduring peace on the planet, what I experience as I enter the unseen domains of soul and psyche shows graphically and directly that we are all interconnected. Our personal challenges are not just our own. They are shared by everyone. Mothers and fathers suffer when their babies die or their children are killed in war. Families suffer when there is crime to a member of their family. Children suffer when their parents divorce or separate. Communities suffer from group-based hatred. Everyone suffers from war, oppression, and genocide, and on and on. It is our suffering that unites us, or at least in part our suffering that unites us, makes us the same. No matter how different our individual and collective experiences are, no matter how different on the surface are our cultural, religious, political, societal, racial, and national identities, no matter where we live on the planet. Indeed, as one of my guests on Destiny Lines, Mandy Bird, will tell you in my next podcast, through our grief and the challenges of life, when we deal with them constructively, with compassion, we tap into our absolute oneness across the human family, and also can then hear and see the ways the animals and even the earth suffer, and we can feel compassion for them, connected to them. And then out of that, we can begin, as she says, and as I say, to find out what our passion is as sacred activists for peacemakers, where we want to put our life into service. And the other thing is that I not only can discover in my work with clients and uncover and remove the woundings, but then I do a soul retrieval and a gift retrieval, because also there is joy, also there is hope and inspiration and nourishment and support. And the key thing is that when we remove, we extract and heal the wound and the distorted beliefs that has arisen, we then can experience the joy that is right there deep within us. Joy is our natural birthright. Just in breathing in, breathing in and out, an act that happens unconsciously through our autonomic nervous system, which I call the breath of light, the breath of love. We are inhaling the generous, abundant peace, joy, and harmony that is life, that Mother Earth gives us naturally. But, sometimes we need help, and that is good. So we reach out, we find help. There is no shame in doing so. And knowing you need help is an important component of the inner work that goes along with sacred activism for peacemaking. Now, I say all of this because I know that a lot of people believe that ceaseless suffering from unhealed wounds is just part of being human. I hear a societal message in my country and perhaps in other areas around the world that we can never be healed, that the best we can do is march on and continue to suffer. We are taught to numb out and shut off, to be out of touch with our feelings, and to even deny we have been or are being affected by our losses and challenges, or even by what is going on in the world. This way of thinking has such an intense grip on our worldview that even though there are a multitude of pathways for healing and restoration, they remain unseen, ignored, or even denigrated. I know this well as a shamanic energy healer because of the fact that I travel in circles of other healers working in a variety of non-mainstream modalities. In my 4th podcast, I speak about how the Native American healing traditions that are the foundation of my practice are denigrated in part due to the misunderstanding of and prejudices against those cultures that has been historical going back hundreds of years. And while I'm not one to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and myself have benefited, as I've just said, from working with psychologists to address my trauma, nevertheless, I see how Western medicine and psychology have a huge, and I would venture to say, often negative power to dictate what is real and acceptable. Truly, this is a sad state of affairs because human beings, in their incredible creativity, have created and maintained so many powerful ways to address all that ails us, from the physical to the psychological to the soul and spirit. We can personally heal and become stronger and more joyful out of our woundedness. We can do more than just survive. We can thrive again. And we can find refuge within to come home to. And inasmuch as this is true on a personal, individual basis, this is also true on a global, collective basis. So what that means is that through that powerful interconnection that we have with everyone, everything, with Mother Earth, all our relations that we share this planet with, so that healing can be for humanity. And that healing is critical to ending the violence. It is critical to harnessing our highest destiny lines to a great peace. So, as a sacred activist for peacemaking, I have my medicine basket of love, as I call it, and I offer it to you in my courses, in my programs, in my healing work. Because, as I have discovered, in healing, we find joy, we find our purpose, we find our passion for changing the world. I hope I've inspired you to step forward towards your healing as part of your own mission as a sacred activist for peacemaking. Heal your beautiful life, heal our beautiful world. There's no time to lose. And as I do at the end of every one of my podcasts, at the end of every healing, every ceremony, every class I teach, I offer this prayer. May all the good of these healing words be for the benefit of all beings, that all beings will be freed and liberated from the past, that all beings will be healed, whole, will walk in joy and peace and love. May it be so. Wado, aho. Be well, and I hope you'll tune in again. Aho, Wado. Thank you for joining me, Rachel Mann, PhD, your host of this powerful podcast series, Destiny Lines, Sacred Activism for Peacemaking and Ending Violence. I hope you have been inspired into manifesting your dream for yourself personally or for or within your organization to dream forth a world of compassion, love, and peace. If you would like to find out more about me and my work, you may go to my website at rachelmannphd.com or email me at rachelmannphd@gmail.com. I offer individual energy healing sessions, a 3-month mentoring program for individuals wishing to magnetize their sacred service to the world, as well as programs, retreats, and classes for individuals and organizations who are inspired by the mission of sacred activism for peacemaking and ending violence. I look forward to you joining me and to hearing from you. Let's get started. There's no time to lose.